Hello YouTube chess lovers and my friends, this is Gunjan here. Welcome to my 58th episode of Dirty Chess Tricks. Now, in spite of having knowledge of many tricks and traps, recently I fall for one of the high profile trick, and not to my surprise, when I checked later on in the database, I found out that there are very few games played with this line. So in a nutshell, you can use this line as a complete surprise weapon in the tournament practice. The opening arises after the following move order: e4, d5, e captures d5, queen captures d5, knight to c3, attacking the queen, queen to a5, and now the main move over here is d4, but as you go on, you will see that my opponent completely avoid that move. Here you can continue with either of these two moves. Let's say in the game he continue with knight to f3, and after the main line continuation knight to f6, bishop to c4. It is very natural for any black Scandinavian player that he wants to take this bishop out before he closes down the pawn chain. Okay, bishop to f5. So now I am all set to create my little center with e6 and c6, and accordingly white still delay the movement of the d pawn and castle on the king side. Well, I respond with e6, and after rook to e1, here comes the most critical position where if black continue with the natural response c6, which looks very obvious as white is threatening the move rook to e5, in fact turn out as a big time disaster for the black camp. Let's see what is wrong with this obvious move, as it gives the escape square to the black queen. But in fact, after rook to e5, it doesn't matter wherever queen moves. White next move is very obvious. Yup, you guessed it from the title. Rook captures f5, a wonderful exchange sack which completely ruined down black all hopes in the opening stage. Here black has three obvious choices, and let's see each by turn how disastrous black position can become in each of this variation. The first move I want to consider is queen to c7, which in fact I played in the game, and as soon as my opponent played the obvious move rook captures f5, I was completely shell-shocked, as I have never seen such an exchange sacrifice in the opening stage. Okay, black has no choice, he has to recapture the rook, and now comes the whole point behind this exchange sacrifice, as white has this lethal reply: knight to g5. And suddenly, to my horror, I found out that there is actually no defense on f7 square. Now, even though I lost badly in this game, I like to show you how quickly white can rip apart the black camp, as I continue with this small tactic, knight to g4. So if white continue with the foolish move knight captures f7, then I can create some problem with queen to h2 check. Well, my 2200 rated opponent is a very smart guy, and obviously he didn't fall for this, and he chose the wise approach. First queen to e2 check, and black can choose three worst options to lose the game. First, king to d7 is a worst move in this position, and the simple reason is white has this lethal response, bishop to e6, so that if the king moves, then black will lose a piece, and the obvious response, f captures e6 completely fails due to the simple tactic. Queen captures e6 check, king to d8, and now knight to f7 check forces black to give up the queen and in fact the game. The second option, bishop to e7, in fact I played in the game. So black has still the threat on h2, but see yourself how quickly white get the upper hand with bishop captures f7 check. So already I have to be careful. King has to go to the only square, king to d7. And I had some hope in this position, thinking that okay, I'm attacking his knight as well as there's a threat on h2. But just one move and all of my hopes are gone. My opponent played this accurate response, queen to d3 check. And now I really don't want to play bishop to d6 as all of my threat will be gone. And king to c8 is not a possibility due to the queen to f5 check. Finally, I decided to play queen to d6, thinking that at least queen will be exchanged and I will be in exchange up. But this is just a miserable position for black camp, as after the accurate response, queen captures f5 check, king to c7, and white can take the knight, but in fact he found the better continuation, namely knight to e6 check. So now king to d7 or king to c8, you are in the line of discover check. So I choose the worst one, king to b6. But my opponent stopped all my king dance with this final decisive blow, knight to a4 check, and I simply resign in the view of king to a6 and now this wonderful move, knight to c5, so that if my king comes up to the board, then he is getting checkmated. And the only hope for the black is to give up the queen, which I personally think is a hopeless, as black open king and loss of material are too much to handle the white attack. Well, after that 18 move miniature, I personally look out for this line in detail, and amazingly enough, this exchange sacrifice is very sound and gives white a great attacking chances. For example, if here black can block the check with the queen, still he get a worse position, and I like to show you a game between 2000 plus rated opponent where black continue with queen to e5, counter-attacking the white queen, but white calmly continue with knight captures f7. Okay, black response is force, black has to capture on e2, and after knight captures e2, there is nothing better than rook to g8, at least trying to save the exchange. Well, white find the accurate sequence, knight to d6 check, bishop captures d6, bishop captures g8, and yes, at this point white is a clear pawn up, but black's idea was he wants to play bishop captures h2 check, and after king to f1, still that 7 pawn is hanging and you don't have time to protect this, as g3 will trap down this bishop. But black has calculated all of this, and after knight to f6, he thought that he had a balanced position. Guess what? The game finished very quickly after this, as white played bishop to e6. So now indeed black is going to lose a pawn, as he has to save his bishop. So black continue with bishop to c7. And yep, white can take on f5 and remain a pawn up, but white found even stronger reply, namely bishop to c8. After knight to d7, bishop captures b7, rook to d8 and bishop captures c6, the dust is clear and you can easily see after all this forcing transaction, white emerged with a 2-pawn advantage, which is in fact more than sufficient to win the game. Okay, let's look at the second move, queen to d8. And here comes the important memory marker, guys. Apart from queen to c7, if your opponent plays any other queen moves, then after this exchange sacrifice, you really want to play the move knight to e5. Why? What is wrong with knight to g5? Well, black has now enough resources to cover the d file, and now no longer there is pressure on the f7 square. So remember, don't play knight to g5. The correct response is knight to e5. And this time around, the point is knight to d5 by black doesn't work here, and the simple reason is after knight captures d5, pawn captures d5, and the move bishop to b5 check, black knight can't block that deadly diagonal. So it is very obvious that here black has to come up with better choices. Well, after studying all of these variations, the first opponent I faced, he indeed continued with queen to d8, and after my knight to e5, he found the best response, namely queen to d4, attacking to spot. So white response is forced. White has to play queen to e2, and now white is ready to give the discover check, so my opponent blocked it with bishop to e7. Now as the black is ready to castle, you have to throw this important check, bishop captures f7. And here it doesn't matter wherever the king goes. White next response are very obvious. For example, in the game my opponent played the move king to f8. I simply respond with bishop to b3, and now white has a simple plan, namely knight to f7 and nabbing the rook. In fact, my opponent immediately made a mistake in this position by playing knight b to d7, which allows this simple tactics, knight to f7, rook to g8, and now the star move, knight to g5. So now I have a double threat, bishop captures g8, as well as the important one, knight to e6 check, which will nab the black queen. My opponent played the move queen to e5, and here chess engine suggests that I should avoid the queen trade, which completely gives white a winning advantage. However, I found the simple solution, namely knight to e6 check, king to e8, queen captures queen, knight captures queen, and now the sting in the tail, knight to c7 check, king to d7, knight captures 8, and after rook captures 8. If you carefully look at this position, not only white obtain a bishop pair, but he has a clear pawn advantage, which with the accurate play again hugely favors the white camp. Last but not least, what happens after queen to b4? Well, more or less same story, as we are going to deliver this exchange sacrifice with rook captures f5. And here if black continues with e captures f5, then after knight to e5, again black is having a huge difficulty, as after the simple line, let's say knight to d7, we can first kick this queen out with a3, and when the queen moves, we can now safely capture on f7, which gives black a huge problem after knight to g5. After rook to h8 and the move d4, black simply cannot castle due to knight to f7, and the obvious looking move h6 completely fails due to the following tactics: knight to f7, rook to h7, and now the star move, bishop to f4. And even though black is an exchange up, he has a complete miscoordination going on in his camp, and all in all, this position usually favor the white camp. So again, after rook captures f5, if black take the rook, then he's asking for the trouble. But you might say, hang on, you capture my bishop, I will capture yours. And now what? As doesn't your rook is completely misplaced? Well, of course not, as white has this following line which again gives him a great advantage. Here the key move you have to remember is d3, attacking the queen, and the base place for the queen is to go to the a6 square, and after that white has this small trap starting with rook to f4. In fact, one of my lower rank opponent fall into this as he continue with this obvious looking move, bishop to d6, attacking my rook. But after the following sequence, rook to a4, counter-attacking the queen, queen to b6. And now, did you spot it? Yup, the easiest move, bishop to e3, attacking the queen. And in the game, my opponent decided to play queen to c7, which with the naked eye wins the pawn. After rook captures a7, rook captures a7, and bishop captures a7. And mind you, this bishop is not trapped, as after b6 we can simply capture this knight and remain a healthy pawn advantage. That's it guys, I hope you enjoy and like this wonderful exchange sack in the Scandinavian. Remember, if your opponent played the obvious looking move c6, give him this root shock with rook to e5, and it doesn't matter wherever the queen moves. The next move is very obvious. Yup, this wonderful exchange sack which enables white a great attack on f7, and however black wriggles, the victory awaits for you just within the opening stage. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and I will meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.